And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. Just a little random episode popping up here today. We didn't do one on Monday, Robert Watson and I, who we are dubbing that thing Two Nobodies Who Know Nothing. We're going to get we've got someone working on a logo right now, and we'll get an intro for that, and it'll make a shift. Shaping Success Treasure Valley is where I interview local people. We're getting right back into that soon. I had to readjust my studio a little bit because, well, I'm in a new studio. I've had to make some changes. I've had to do some things. What's up, Nikki? How's it going? I had to make some adjustments, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk about adjustments in life. If you enjoy these episodes, please do me a big favor. Go over to Apple Podcast. Make sure you like, share, and review. Go subscribe on YouTube. We actually lost subscribers, which is kind of funny because it does fluctuate up and down. But the more that subscribe, the more that comment, the more that work on that, being there and engaging in the conversation, the better it is for us and the algorithm to keep this show going. If you want to support the show, you can go over to patreon.com/Wes Tankersley, and you can support the show that way for as little as, I don't know, I think it's like $3 a month. You can support the show. We've got some really great patrons that support us. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks, Anna. And we've got a couple of, you don't have to be paid. There's some paid ones, but we get sometimes we do some bonus episodes and things like that. So just come tune in, come check it out, come be there. It's funny. I wanted to hop on here because I was thinking about some stuff. I was talking with my daughter the other day, and I'm super proud of her because she had gone to a different school for a long time. And that school that she was going to, I just didn't have the greatest feeling about it. She went there for 2 years. We've moved a few times in the last couple of years. And she's essentially in her fourth school, and she's 12. It's tough. We haven't moved really far, but we've moved and we've changed places and we've done this and that. But she has never had homework. Never. She just got into the 6th grade. Middle school is one of those things where you have, different periods. So you got 7 periods a day. Whereas in like elementary school, first through kindergarten through, 5th here in Idaho or where we live, because they have junior highs in some places. They didn't have homework. But you're in the same class, right? So you don't have a rotating schedule or anything like that. And for those of you who know me, I was a PE teacher. So the one disappointment that I had with her was that she got a B in PE. And that's tough for me being a former PE teacher because I know what the grading criteria is in PE. And it's improvement and participation. And so, I was thinking about this quote today that Michael Jordan put in there, and it said, "I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I can't accept not trying." And the lesson that I learned when I was teaching physical education was the fact that it wasn't that you weren't good at something, because I think that a lot of kids go in there thinking that they're not going to be the greatest athlete, they're not be the greatest participant, they're not going to do this, they're not going to do that. It doesn't matter if you can't run, if you can't throw, if you can't catch, if you can't do those things, because what matters to me is if you try. And I think that a lot of us get lost in that. A lot of us don't know how to try anymore. We're afraid of what the outcome is. We're afraid of what will happen if we try, if we give it an attempt. What's going to happen? And I made a post earlier today on TikTok. We were talking about how you only fail when you quit, right? You only fail when you quit. So when Michael Jordan says I can accept failure, everyone fails at something, but I can not accept not trying, then what he's really saying is that failure, people who fail don't really fail. They just quit trying. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that we get lost in. We decide that we can't do it anymore. And in that post, I talked about some of the things that I've quit in my life. And there's been a couple things. But what the main focus on that was to move forward. That's all there is to it. You must be moving forward every single time. You must be working to be better at what you are no matter what. And the conversation I had with my daughter was like, why did you get a B in PE? I know the answer, but I want you to tell me why. Why did you get a B in PE? And she didn't tell me. She didn't say. And I said, okay, so let's get this let's get this out of the way because I know exactly why you got a B in PE. Did you fitness test in the beginning of the year? Yes. So it's been, I don't know what their trimesters are. I think they're 9 weeks. So it's been 9 weeks, okay? And they fitness test in the first 9 weeks or whatever. And then what do? At the end of the year or at the end of the trimester, they fitness test again. So as a teacher, what you do is you compare the beginning score to the end score. And if there's no improvement, what does that show you? What does that data show you if there's no improvement? That you didn't get stronger, that you didn't do better, that you weren't getting any better in what you were doing. It's the same thing with a test, right? So in math class, the teacher gives you a test in the beginning. They teach you the skill. The test is to see where you're at, right? Because that's what the first fitness test is, to see where you're at. And if you go to the other side of that, after they've taught the lesson, and you take the final test and you don't do better, then two things happen, right? Because data doesn't lie. There's two things that happen. Number one, either you didn't learn anything, or number two, you didn't try. Because you should have knowledge, and that's what they're trying to show you is the knowledge. Now, I'm not saying that every time this could be the student's fault, because it's a very good possibility that it could be the teacher's fault. But as a former teacher, how it goes and how you teach people and the things that they do today versus what they did when I was in school is insane. Because she told me yesterday, I said, so you got a B in PE, the semester's over. And she goes, yeah, but we can do retakes. And I'm sitting there going, retakes. So you didn't give the effort that you should have. Now you get a second opportunity to get the effort that you should have, but you didn't do it the first time. Okay? You didn't study. You didn't do the work. You take the test, you fail, and you get a second chance. And my big problem with that is, what does that teach the student? What did they learn from that if you give them another chance to do the work that they should have done the first time? What are we teaching our kids? We're teaching them that it's okay to not do the work because you get a second chance. Life isn't like that. How many times have you been working for someone and you didn't get it right the first time and your job relied on it and they fired you? How does that work? Do you get second chances all the time? Sometimes you may get a second chance, but it's not very often, because if you make a decision that the whole team relies on and it's not the correct one and everyone has to sacrifice for what you did, it's a problem. And that's the sad part. And you sound like a hard-ass dad. That's what people will say. But the fact of the matter is that I have taught her that she needs to work as hard as she possibly can. And the funny thing is there's no right or wrong way to parent. There's no guidebook for it. There's no anything for it. But I will tell you this. If you are always striving to improve in what you're doing, and when I said improve, and when I talked to her about the improvement, and she showed me, look, I can do a push-up now. And she wasn't even on her knees. And she was pretty close to doing a good push-up. It wasn't, like you think about it, kids that are 12 years old, they don't have the strength, that you have as you get older. Like I can't do a push-up very well right now anyway. I could do probably one really good one. But she started out with doing them on her knees and not doing them all the way and not doing it going all the way down. And as a teacher, your back, as your back is flat, straight as a board, push down, chest to the ground, a couple inches off, back up. You would tell them to do that every single time. She went down. She kept her back flat as a board. Her elbows weren't quite as bent as they should have been, but she did a really good job. And I was proud of her. And then I said, okay, well, how many push-ups did you do in the push-up test? And she told me, and I go, and how many did you do in the second time? Did you do better? No. Why not? Why did you not do better? And she goes, well, I just didn't want to. I was tired, this or that, blah, blah, blah. And to me, it's like, great. Okay, so you were tired. You didn't do what you're supposed to do, so you got the grade you deserved. There should be no retake on that. That's all there is to it. But what we've run into with this in teaching, one of the big reasons that I left teaching was because the fact that you teach to the test everything that you have. And as a teacher, your job, your raise, your livelihood is dependent on how high the test score is. So I got an argument another way from another teacher when I first started, was like, well, if they didn't get a passing grade, then they didn't learn what they needed to learn. And so we have to reteach it. Well, back in the day, what happened was you flunked, right? Like you had to retake the class. And I started talking to her about scores, and like she's smart enough because this is how I got through college. And the funny thing is like I'm telling her, like, listen, here's the deal. I have a master's degree. How did I get my master's degree? Well, I got really good at writing papers. I wrote to what they wanted. I made sure that I said what they needed to say. I was so pissed off because of my master's degree. It was probably like 90 papers I had to write in this final project, and I had one teacher who gave me a B. I was so mad. She goes, if you think that you met the rubric because they give you this grading rubric and you have to write to that, then show me where. And she had given me a D on it, and I went back, and she goes, I want you to take for part 1 where you met it, I want you to use a different color highlighter for every single part and show me where you met it. So I went through and I highlighted the whole paper and pointed to where she was saying it was and where it was. And she wrote me back an email, and her email said, well, I just don't see it, but since you have a problem with it, I will give you a B. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I literally said that. I'm sitting there thinking, this lady is insane. She has no clue. She didn't prove anything to me. She didn't say, well, I would rather you write it like this, or I would rather you write it like that, and the grade stands. She basically just caved to what I wanted because I was the paying customer, which I just think is completely insane. But all my other classes in my bachelor's degree, what I would do is I knew that I was terrible at taking tests. Like I wasn't good at taking tests. And this is what I found out that my daughter was doing, because she knew that she was good at the opposite. She's good at taking the test, but she's not good at doing the work. Why should I show my work? You know, like that's the number one thing that kids always say in like math class. Will you show your work to show the teacher that how you got to that answer, right? The problem that I had in math class was I never knew how to get to that answer. I was always just not, I don't know, I was listening or I was distracted or I just couldn't do it. I couldn't figure it out because I freaking hated math. But anyway, I got through math. I got the math done that I needed to get. But what I knew is that if I did the homework and the homework grade was worth 70% of my grade, the other 30 was tests, right? And I wasn't good at taking tests. So I would study and I'd work really hard at trying to get that grade, but I'd make damn sure that 70% was 100%. So that I was guaranteed that 70%. So I would guarantee myself a passing grade. However, I wanted the higher grade. So I would study much harder on the test because I wasn't good at taking them. And, you know, I would get a C or whatever, but it would only be part of the grade. So I'm asking my daughter, what the hell are you doing? And this is what she's doing. She's like, well, she always complains about me not doing the work, but I always get a good grade on the test. And if a grade is weighted like that, if you think about that, well, 30% versus 70%, you probably ought to do your homework because 30% doesn't equal 100, no matter how good you are on those tests. But that's the point here. The point to me is that if you are not trying to be better every single day, why not? It doesn't matter what it is. And that's what I told her with the fitness test. If you did 10 push-ups and you had to show improvement, what is an improvement? 11. That's an improvement. You did one more. You did one more than you did before, which shows that you got stronger. Okay. And I get it. There's days where you have a bad day or whatever and you can't do it. You're tired. You're sore. I mean, heck, I moved 7 yards of rock this weekend in my backyard. And I'm telling you, like, I feel old. I feel old. And I don't know if I feel old, but I feel sore. I was talking to my little brother about this morning. You use those muscles that you don't use for a long time doing something that you don't do, and you feel it a lot more as you get older. And he's working on starting. It was the funniest thing because I was listening to him talk about it. I'll be 45 in like 2 weeks. Okay. He just turned 43. Okay. So we're all 2 years apart. He just turned 43, but he decided because he missed out when he was younger on football that he was going to go play in this adult tackle football league. And I called him and I was talking to him and he goes, yeah, I was out there. I hadn't been exercising for a long time. I was thinking of you, Nikki, when I was having this conversation with him, because you're always talking about stretching and I'm telling him you need to stretch. And he was like, I know, but I gotta do this and this and this. And like, they keep doing all these funny things with me and they're telling me to go out there and do like high knees and butt kickers and karaoke and these things like I'm not stretching. And I'm like, You are. You just don't know it because we came from the 90s when static stretching was the way you stretched, which is, you walk out there and you touch your toes and hold it, right? Where dynamic stretching is actual movement, which is what you're doing during a game. And we came to the conclusion that, hey, buddy, you need to do, if you got to do both, do both. But the fact of the matter is you are stretching it that way. But he pulled a hamstring. And it was the very first week he pulled a hamstring. And it was kind of funny because I was like, oh man, dude, you got to think about this. Like, you haven't done this in forever, and you need to, ramp yourself up. You need to exercise. You need to go running every day. You got to do those things that you don't do. You wouldn't just go into the football season and go straight to it, right? Like we had conditioning stuff that we did for football before we started. Like, so we were doing weight room, we were doing sprints, we were doing running, for distance. We were doing all these things before we actually played the game, right? And so you have to do that stuff. You have to keep going. And it was kind of funny because I called and talked to him this morning. He's like, hey, I need to see if you can, I sold him this weight rack that I had. He's like, can you come help me set it up? And I'm like, yeah, sure, some point, whatever. And then I started talking to him about his football thing. I'm like, how's that going? And I go, how's your hamstring? And he goes, you're not going to believe this, but I pulled the other one this weekend. I'm like, what did you do different? What did you do different? He goes, well, like I was late to practice. Like I was trying on some cleats because I needed some, blah, 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 blah. And then I got there and they threw me right into it. And I just went all out and boom. I'm like, dude, you can't do that. You cannot do that. Then I went into the David Goggins story about how David Goggins almost killed himself from never stretching and now spends like 2 hours stretching a day. But that's the thing. You must prepare. You must prepare your body for these things. And I didn't go out and go stretch before I shoveled, 7 yards of rock into a wheelbarrow and moved it back and forth. I should have, but I stretched after. I'll tell you that much. Because if I didn't, I'd be hanging over with a cramp in the back of my hamstring. Terrible. But that's the thing, You have to prepare yourself. You have to do the work beforehand. You have to prepare your body. You have to prepare your mind for whatever you are doing. And to take the easy way out never works. It's never going to be that way. So, again, as Michael Jordan said, I can accept failure. Everyone fails at something, but I cannot accept not trying. So, been on my mind. I want you guys to go out there and think about what you're doing in your life. The thing about sports for me is it relates to everything. I can sit there and think about a time when something meant something to me, even like being on time. If you're not 10 minutes early, you're 15 minutes late. And that has helped me to be on time to almost every single thing that I've done in my life. And I'm not telling you that I've never been late before, but I put the emphasis on that and it makes it happen for me. So you have to be willing to try. So think about what you're going to do today. Go out and give it a try. And again, if you want to support the show, please go to patreon.com/Wes Tankersley. Join the Patreon. Help us out. Make sure that you like, share, and review this podcast, Shaping Success Treasure Valley, to nobodies who know nothing, with myself and Robert Watson. Appreciate you guys. Have a great day, and we will see you. Well, there's an episode coming out Thursday, so check out my episode with Matt Todd. On the audio side, it's already out on YouTube, and then Robert and I will be back on Monday. Until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.